Cam Show, brought to you by Rogue Media Sports Network. It is the trade deadline extravaganza review time for how the Red Sox treated their July 30th and how they made this team better. And let me say this, they did make the team better. Did they make a big splash? Of course not. But they made the team better. And I think the reaction among Red Sox fans and Red Sox media has really proven a greater point of how far this team has fallen in terms of the zeitgeist in the city and the genuine interest around the Red Sox and how it has dissipated over the last 5 or 6 years compared to what the excitement is like for the Patriots, for what's going to be a very bad team, for the Celtics coming off a championship, and even the Bruins. I think the way the media has reacted to this Red Sox trade deadline has told you a lot of what you need to know. Because a lot of people out there are saying, why didn't they make the big splash? Why didn't they go out there and get Rengifo or the starter from the White Sox? And why didn't they go out and get this guy? I know you've got a team that could make the playoffs this year. But if you look at this team and you say, I've got my best farm system I've had in almost a decade here. I'm going to trade one, if not more, of my top 6 guys to go out and get Luis Rengifo. Then you're the problem. Then you are the problem. And I know it hasn't been exciting the last couple of years. And I was one of the ones who said they needed to do more in the offseason, that they didn't spend enough. The fact that they had to go out and trade for a DFA James Paxton when they could have just picked up his option last year, yes, that goes for it. Nathan Eovaldi was a name that was on there. That was a guy you had the chance to re-sign a year and a half ago. Justin Turner was a name that was linked to the Red Sox. He eventually goes to Seattle. That was a guy whose option you could have picked up in the offseason. I had plenty of problems with that. I don't have problems with this trade deadline. I don't know what you wanted them to go out there and get. But apparently, some, specifically at 98.5, the Sports Hub, wanted them to go out there and make some big deal. For whom? I don't know, just a big deal, because Texas kind of did that.
Texas won the World Series last year. Who'd they go get? They got Seager.
Right.
That was a big name. It wasn't last year, but they got him. Who'd they get at the deadline? Was it Scherzer or one of those Mets pitchers? They still went out and were aggressive. They had a team that was in contention. They added a big name, a splashy move, and it worked for them. It still works, even though there are so many more nerds in the front offices now.
Yeah, you got all of that wrong. They signed Corey Seager as a free agent 2 off seasons before that. So I don't know why you mentioned that name first. Has nothing to do with the trade deadline and the big splash. They signed him as a free agent in the winter before the 2022 season. So don't know where that's coming from. They did go out and get Max Scherzer, and he started 8 games for them, and he couldn't give them 5 innings in a game in the postseason. They also went out and they got Aroldis Chapman, who they traded their number 1 pitching prospect for. They got a half a season out of Aroldis Chapman, who gave you just about what Craig Kimbrell gave you in the 2018 postseason. Was shaky the whole time. You still won the World Series, so who cares? But that kid's going to be an ace for Pittsburgh. So yes, they did go out there and make some moves. It didn't really bolster their team all that much. They bolstered their team before that. They went out and got Nathan Eovaldi before that in the offseason. They signed Marcus Semien and Corey Seager to big-time deals. And the deal that they did make at the trade deadline, which was not a huge splash that they didn't even mention, was the one guy who was pivotal for them, and that's Jordan Montgomery. And if the Red Sox made a deal like that, like the one that the Rangers made for Jordan Montgomery, we'd be saying, why didn't they go out there and make a big splash? So that's just pure lunacy. That's just an idiot trying to make a take and throwing it out there and just getting all of the facts wrong. They didn't go out there and make a big splash. They went out and got some guys that could bolster the team that they have now without touching any of their top 20 prospects. No one in the top 20. So you say, oh, you traded Nick York for a project and the starting pitcher from Pittsburgh. Yes, you traded a first-round pick in Nick York for a first-round pick in Priester. He's a project. He's got some great upside. So does Nick York. You were done with the Nick York experience. You didn't know where you were going to put him. He has good numbers at AAA, but he didn't make the majors because you didn't have a spot for him in the majors for a team with all these holes. That's okay. You can get rid of Nick York. Maybe you could have got something a little bit better, but probably not. He was the number 20 prospect in your system. So what were you expecting to get out of him? Pittsburgh likes seeing those numbers in AAA, and you go and get someone that you might be able to use in your rotation as early as next year. Good, because you weren't going to have Nick York in your lineup as soon as next year. You just weren't. So that's a good, sound deal by Craig Breslow, who brought in a couple of guys. Lucas Sims from Cincinnati, very potent middle of the bullpen guy. His numbers aren't terrific. His FIP's not great. His homers per nine is not great, but that's what you're looking at this time of year. You got Danny Jansen, who maybe you can get a good half a season out of him. You take a flyer on him. All this comes back to guys who can play at the major league level outside of Priester, who you got without trading any of your big prospects. And for me, I think that's a good move for the Red Sox. When you get two bullpen arms who pitched at the major league level this year and were effective at times, you have those guys slotted in there until your real relievers like Martin and Slayton come back, and then you're in business. But apparently Craig Breslow's business has not been enough for some because, well, I'll just let Mike Felger and Tony from Peabody tell you why Craig Breslow is not doing a good enough job.
Yeah.
Tony and Peabody. Hi, Tony.
Hi, guys. Great show. My beef with the Red Sox is basically they gave away 4 or 5 games after the All-Star break because they had no 7th or 8th inning pitchers. If that was Dave Dombrowski, a real baseball guy, he would have went out the next day and got 1 or 2 relief pitchers that could have helped them until, temporarily until the 2 big guys came back. And, this guy, Craig Breslow, he doesn't know what the hell he's doing. He's not a baseball guy. Look, those are key games that they lost after the All-Star break. They lost 2 out of 3 to the Dodgers, 1 to Colorado, and at least 1 to the Yankees. That's 4 games. If they had half-decent 7th or 8th inning guys, they could have won those games, Mike.
Okay, Tony, I agree. And I agree Breslow's not a baseball guy. I agree. He's another modern analyst. It's all that he is.
He played in the league, though.
I don't consider him a baseball guy. I don't. I think, they promote that he played, but does he sound like a ball player to you?
No.
No. Does he talk like a ball player? No. So it's like, what does it matter? I don't think he thinks like one.
What are you talking about? What? Craig Breslow isn't a baseball guy? The guy who played 13 years in the major leagues is not a baseball guy? What the fuck are you talking about, Mike? He's not a baseball guy because Mike Felger doesn't think he sounds like one or acts like one? Okay, so what if they had Kevin Millar in there instead? You'd be A-okay with his moves because he's a baseball guy? What are we fucking doing, man? How much more baseball do you need to be than to play 13 years in the major leagues to win a World Series with the team that you are the GM for right now? If you don't think he's a good GM, that's one thing. But to say he's not a baseball guy is certifiably fucking insane. It's nuts. It's completely gusto. What are you talking about? He doesn't sound like one because he went to Yale? I don't know what to tell you. And who gives a shit if they are a baseball guy? The best GM in the history of this team didn't pick up a bat past probably fucking JV. His name was Theo Epstein. And he had the same philosophy as the guy in line right now. So what are we talking about? Oh, he sounds like a nerd. Yeah, Theo was a fucking nerd. And they won 2 World Series with him. He turned the franchise around. Dave Dombrowski is also a nerd, by the way. They know what fit means. I know you don't, Mike. And that's fine, but you don't get to tell me who's a baseball guy and who isn't, especially one who has a pension from Major League Baseball. Give me a fucking break with this. The Red Sox trade deadline was fine. It was fine. It was not earth-shattering. This is a team that when they're healthy, as we've seen this year, when they're healthy, should probably be a playoff team anyway. I know we weren't expecting that going into this season, but how about we give Craig Breslow a bit of a chance here? Because again, I don't like how they handled this offseason either. But with this ownership group hamstringing their GMs the last 5-6 years. Let's at least give him a couple off seasons to see what he can do. This was not the July to say, let's go out there and get the best starter on the market on July 30th. This was not the time for that. So how about we let them potentially get to a postseason and then work from there? Huh? Not a baseball guy. That's like saying Felger's not a sports radio guy because you don't like the way he sounds. What the fuck are we talking about? But this all goes to show, this whole media reaction goes to show how far the Red Sox have fallen in the public eye in Boston. And that's sad. It's sad, but I'm a victim of it. You know, I don't watch 150 games like I used to. I probably watch 100. But the fact that this is the reaction is like, why don't we sign somebody we know that I don't have to Google? Oh, I also don't watch baseball ever. So why don't we get a guy that I know even though I don't watch the fucking sport? That's like saying, why don't we get a gymnast that I know? I only know Simone Biles, but why don't we get someone that we've actually heard of? Oh, God, it's just brain dead stupidity. Having a take for the sake of having a take. Craig Breslow isn't a baseball guy, has a World Series ring, and he's not a baseball guy. Oh, give me a fucking break.
We are Rogue Media Sports.